What's going on, YouTube family? Everybody tuning in. Everybody watching. This is another video that I really want you guys to pay attention to. This is another video that's being added to my series, Evil in the Industry. And before we begin with what I want to talk about, I want to explain to you guys why I call it Evil in the Industry. Because I know a lot of you are going to ask, well, why do I call it Evil in the Industry when I'm going to talk about government affairs, things that are going on in the community that disturb me, and other things, not just what's going on in the industry? Well, when I started coming up with this idea for this series of videos titled Evil in the Industry, my initial plan was to only talk about what's going on in the industry that disturbs me and that should disturb you as the viewer. But as time went on, I started to realize that the industry, and when I say industry, I mean the entertainment industry. They are connected. The entertainment industry and the government are connected. And, there's no real separation between the two. The entertainment industry plays a really big part in politics, and the politics plays a really big part in the entertainment industry. They have a symbiotic relationship. With that being said, I decided that it's just one big industry. The government is here to entertain us to some capacity, at least in this day and age, in the 21st century. A lot of politicians wish that they could be in the entertainment industry, and a lot of entertainers wish they could be in politics. And you can't really talk about one without seasoning the conversation with the other. With that being said, on to the video. Now, I was going to continue to talk about what's going on with the stimulus package and the FBI being funded with the money that should be given to you as the citizens so that you could pay your bills and take care of your responsibilities in this messed up economy. But I'll save that for another video. Right now, what I want to discuss with you is something I found out that they should have never let slip out, because the time was coming for someone to figure out the truth about Black history. And right now it's just a hypothesis. It's just an opinion. But it makes sense. When it comes to this conscious community, when it comes to the ideas we have within the conscious community about our identity as a people, we all have it right. Those of us who follow the Kemetic sciences and believe we are descendants of Egypt, those of us who are like the Hebrew Israelites and believe we are the descendants of the Israelites, those of us who believe we are indigenous people to the Americas, they all have it correct. Why do I think that? Before I get into that, the problem is we've been so damaged by our slave masters that we are unable to see the full truth as a whole. We're unable to work together enough to realize that we all have a piece of the same fucking puzzle. We have the truth already, at least most of it. What we have fucked up is that how we came about the truth and the information we still include in the truth. We still use our slave masters' history and science to piece together the parts of the truth that we have. We still use their timelines. We still use their information. And the problem is, we can't begin to truly understand the truth about our culture and our history if we keep taking information from them and relying on it, because the problem is they weren't there. We didn't need to do a whole bunch of research to figure out that they were not present in Egypt, as far as they were not the pharaohs, they were not the Egyptians, they weren't even the Hebrews who built the fucking pyramids. They weren't. And how we know that is simple common sense. If they were there, the tradition on and the information on how to build these structures, the truth on how these structures were built and how they lasted for so long, and the sciences behind why they were built would have been passed down. They would have known how this was done, and they sadly do not, which is why they have to go and desecrate graves, dig up bodies and steal them, steal the gold out of there, steal the artifacts, just steal every fucking thing, and then go paint over everything to make it seem like they actually played a part in this story that we call history. Now, then, once you realize that, common sense would lead you to question if they played such a big part in the story of our life, why would they then, upon enslaving us, not allow us to pass on our oral traditions or written traditions, to basically continue our culture? And I believe the reasoning why, I know the reasoning why, is to prevent us from continuing to have the understanding that at some point we were at the top of the food chain. We ruled the world, the entire world. They use this Pangea theory that all the continents were one to distract us away from the truth. And I know that sounds kind of vague. See, all the continents were one. A school bus is about to drive by, so you're going to hear some noise. Where was I? All the continents were one, but I don't think literally, in the sense that all of these land masses were put together as if they were puzzle pieces. I don't believe that. At least not in our foreseeable past, and not close enough in our past to where it would basically have any effect on us directly as a people and decide how we develop. I want to make you guys understand something. Pangea is a real thing, but not the way that they describe it to us. As in, at one point in time, the landmass is split. Okay, so if that was the case, we, for one, were not educated, I want to use that term, enough to really understand what the fuck was going on. Number two, I think if dinosaurs were a thing, which they're pulling up bones, that would be the time span that would have had to have happened. That the land masses would have split before man was even here. Or before man was as we currently are. Let's put it that way. Now, we also must understand, Pangea is a real thing, but I think just like the Bible, the way it describes things, not everything is quite literal. Pangea is the concept or the understanding. I think they know this. I think they just want to fool us with stupid shit that wouldn't make any sense, because we'll believe anything. That we're all one figuratively. We're all ruled by one society. That's the true Pangea. And here's proof of that. Egypt, as we know it, or Mizraim, or Kemet, I believe is one of the youngest societies of antiquity in regards to black people. I want to believe that, and before I get into that, what tells me this is that, and this is from a documentary from archaeologists that I've watched and, took a few notes on them, but I don't have the notes with me, unfortunately. So I might have to do this video again, clarifying certain things. But the reason why I believed Egypt is the youngest of one of the youngest civilizations from antiquity and the history of black people is because of the name Egypt or Mizraim, leading to the notion of bondage. That's what the name implies, bondage. And that's the last part of our history that we got to see as we were, as the people that we were before we became the people we are today, was bondage and slavery. It is also an early part of our history, and one minute, it's hot. Hold on, my cookies. And essentially the artifacts there. When we look at the artifacts, let's say the Sphinx, for example. And this is going to support my theory. Sorry for the pauses because there's a lot of distractions outside right now. I'll probably redo the video or whatever. But now, as we look at ancient architecture in Egypt, and this is going to trip y'all up. The Sphinx that we know as the Sphinx today, and the pyramids we know as the pyramids today, are not the only Sphinxes, the only Sphinx or the only pyramids. They're not. There are sphinxes in other parts of Africa, in the Middle East, here in America, Europe, and multiple other locations around the globe. There are also pyramids in other parts of the globe. They differ slightly in architecture due to cultural differences that would have developed over time, or tribal differences, but the architecture is the same. Now, here is why I think Egypt, or Mizraim, is one of the youngest civilizations, and that it's not what we think it is. I do think Israel, or Judah, or many of the other cultures came first. That doesn't mean that they developed into Egypt. That means that they came first and started their civilization, and then Egypt started to build. They were already there, but they weren't what we, as this great culture yet. They were both building at different locations close by, and then developed, and Egypt reached this golden era, which in turn allowed them to enslave us, but their slavery, enslave us as in the Judah, the Israelite, they were so great at this time, and we were so at a sunken place, they were able to then enslave us. But their slavery, there's information coming out that they didn't treat us as badly as history has told us. And I'm going to get into why they told us that they did these things, if it's true that they didn't treat us this way. But before I get into that, the picture that history has painted is that, 1 minute. Okay. Why this society, I believe, is one of the youngest is because when you go to Khufu, right, which, if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the earlier pharaohs, and therefore supposedly he was the one who commissioned the development of the Sphinx and the 3 great pyramids, right? When you go into Khufu's tomb and everything, that's not actually true. He did not commission those structures. Those structures were actually built long before he came into rule. And as far as at least the Sphinx, for sure, they found evidence of this upon further investigation of the Sphinx. The Sphinx is located, like I said, there are other sphinxes that differ slightly, but they are still sphinx. The structures are more dilapidated and basically falling the fuck apart, which I think was done purposefully to hide this one kingdom theory, to hide the fact that this was one kingdom, not one landmass. The Sphinx was apparently has records of when it was built, and there is a inventory slab or tablet basically in one of the tombs that describe what's there. And basically when they cross-referenced all the information that they found recently, they realized Khufu did not commission the building of the Sphinx, and that it actually was built centuries before Egypt as a global power. So what that would basically indicate is that Egypt developed a little later, or much later, than we thought. And not just that, but when they went to, I guess, when they went to go further investigate the pyramids and the Sphinx, that over time they had been, with each, I guess, dynasty, they had been worked on to keep them pristine. So basically when they look at the stones and how they're laid, there's different building techniques that were applied on each layer, which means some of these structures were built in much longer time spans than we believed and thought. Not just that, but even the Sphinx had later plans to have been built with another layer over, I guess indicating that it would have been Anubis over the Sphinx. And there's hidden passageways within the Sphinx that we still haven't discovered, and that these people don't even know how to access. They're just recently figuring it out. We have to use current science to figure these things out. Mind you, oral tradition would have been able to cut out all of that research, because oral tradition would have told us exactly where these places were. You know what I mean? Because when it comes to China, if you go to China and you ask a Chinaman who's kept up with their family history, you get a small piece of what was going on in the past, because you ask their father what was going on during your time, the grandfather what was going on during this time, great grandfather, and you keep going up, and you get this oral tradition, and you get like a small glimpse of what the fuck was going on, what were the traditions, what sciences were developed at this time, what was going on. Of course, people could lie, but it's the closest thing to the truth that you'd have to find, and as far as a true translation of history. The Egyptians there today were not fucking there when we were there. Okay? Number two, the people that go research weren't fucking there. So when they are translating these hieroglyphs and these documents, I think they have the translations wrong. I think they have timelines wrong, and which explains why there is a contradiction between Egypt and the Bible, and Egypt and other history, and why we can't figure out how Egypt did what they did, and we can't figure out how Israel, Black Israel, did the things they did, because they're intertwined and entangled as a society, and they are one society, just different tribal groups. And the fact that there are architecture shared between these two groups, shared between the fucking world, that would tell us who did what and what they were. They had different belief systems, but I honestly believe this is why all cultures that with a religion have the one God theory, in a sense that we all believe in technically one sole God, right? Yahweh, one God, and there are other deities under that, but there's only one central figure as the head, the top dog. In all societies that have religion, that we developed anyway, or that they stole ideas from. In the Abrahamic faiths, there's Yahweh, top dog, God. Then there's angels. Then you have his prophets, including Christ, right? Or Yeshua. And then you have the followers, the disciples, which are not the prophets, but you have the disciples, and, I guess they're considered with the prophets. And then you have the worshipers, and then you have just regular ass motherfuckers who are sinning. In Egypt, you have the top dog, which I believe is either Osiris or is it Ra? One of the two. You have the top dog. Then you have the other gods, which are the angels. They're on the same level as the angels. You have Anubis, all these other, they have different roles, right? For different things. And then you have people who told their stories, the Pharisees and all of that stuff. You have the people who go out and tell the stories and pass on the information from the gods, and which would be equivalent to the prophets. Then you have worshipers, the loyal worshipers, and then you have whatever, and it goes down from there. Then you have other religions with Buddha. You have people following them, the monks and all that stuff. Then you have, so it's all one belief system, just different languages, which supports the Bible, that we were all one fucking people, spoke pretty much one system of languages, and then we were all divided, that God divided us and confounded us, which we would still be able to follow our traditions. There would just be slight changes. So once you start putting together the Kemetic science and the Hebrew Israelite beliefs and the Aboriginal belief systems and all of that, basically you start to come to one truth and one conclusion, that we rule the entire world. Doesn't matter what tribe you subscribe to being a part of or descending from. It doesn't fucking matter. You are all one people. You all have pretty much essentially the same belief system, which now leads me to something crazy. I just thought about it. Nimrod joined the world for the most part as one people to go against the Creator.